Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot. China has swiftly retaliated against fresh U.S. tariffs. A range of American agricultural and food products will face between 10 to 15% hikes in import levies. It has also placed 25 U.S. firms under export and investment restrictions. This move comes just as China's top policymakers and thousands of delegates gather in Beijing this week for what's known as the Two Sessions, the annual meeting of two key Chinese institutions. First up is the top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC, and top legislator, the National People's Congress, or NPC for short. Top of the agenda this time around, GDP and inflation targets, fiscal stimulus plans, and how Beijing aims to tackle domestic consumption, housing market risks, and tech innovation in the year ahead. For more insights on all of this, we're joined by Dr. Chong Ja Ian, Associate Professor from the Department of Political Science at the NUS Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Dr. Chong, it's great to have you on. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
It's always great to chat with you. Lots to unpack today. So let's start with those swift retaliation on tariffs from China. Now, just before this, President Xi Jinping urged officials to stay composed in the face of both domestic and global challenges, signaling that Beijing will take a pretty measured approach to Washington's new trade and investment restrictions. Would you say this tariff response was expected, or did it come as a surprise to you?
It was definitely expected. I mean, Beijing, since even before the tariffs were imposed, and this would be after Donald Trump's election, but before he took office, was saying that they would respond to pressure, they would respond to any tariffs by the U.S., but in a way that is measured, in a way that doesn't get them to lose their own footing. And they've been trying to express a degree of confidence in their ability to take on whatever the U.S. throws at them.
Yeah, so with these tit-for-tat moves playing out, what kind of impact could they have on the broader U.S.-China trade relationship, both in the short and long term here? And what would you expect this? Would you expect this to be high on Beijing's priority list, especially given its own ongoing concerns about public debt levels and moral hazard issues?
So the disruption to U.S. PRC trade will definitely be important for Beijing. It exports a significant amount to the U.S., and part of its full Made in China 2025 dual circulation approach had been to make Beijing a key exporter to other markets. So if it's going to see a disruption of imports from a major market like the United States, that could affect some of these approaches to try to jumpstart its own economy. So definitely these will be issues of concern to Beijing. But at the same time, Beijing, especially under Xi Jinping's leadership, doesn't like to look weak. And so it is less likely that they will sort of step back and look overtly like they're compromising or taking some sort of loss.
Yeah. So, of course, the NPC session kicks off today with Chinese Premier Li Qiang set to deliver the work report and the finance ministry presenting the budget report. What kind of tone are you anticipating, and how pivotal will this be in shaping China's economic strategy for the rest of the year amid this current global and domestic headwinds that we're seeing?
So I think the tone that Beijing wants to set is one of confidence, one of hope that its economy will be on an upward trajectory once again. It certainly does not wish to demonstrate weakness. I don't think it will. Beijing's leaders will sort of demonstrate that they're too shaken by what's happening in the United States. I think the idea is to show investors and also business people and consumers within the PRC and outside that they know what they're doing, that they have a degree of stability in their policy, such that they'll be able to bring growth, whatever anyone else, including the United States, does.
Yeah, so let's look at things domestically. When it comes to inflation, expectations are that Beijing might lower the CPI growth target to around 2%. What would that signal about China's economic outlook? What measures could we see, being introduced possibly to address deflationary pressures?
So I think given past PRC approaches, they could look at the interest rate. They to make lending. They could try to increase interest rate to try to dampen some of the inflationary pressures. At the same time, that might mean that it could affect growth. So you could see some efforts to provide vouchers and such. But that it's a mixed picture because on the one hand they want to boost consumption, but at the same time they want to reduce inflation. So those two, there's some tension between the two. We've seen these approaches before. They've not worked particularly well. So what they've tried this several rounds before. So it's less clear what Beijing might do. I guess ultimately they need to increase confidence in their own market. At the same time, they also need to sort of look at especially where they are importing, and this is where the tariffs could hit, right? How they could address some of these places where prices would be increasing. And it's not completely up to what Beijing does. So this tit for tat stuff that they're doing, that does actually increase inflationary pressures for the PRC. So the picture's actually quite muddled. Okay, and you talked about boosting consumer demand there. So what policy measures do you think could be most effective in helping stimulate this? How important will, the social welfare initiatives like pensions and insurance be in driving that momentum? So all these measures are good. And as I mentioned, they've been looking at ways to sort of, give vouchers to people as well. But ultimately, I think most observers believe that dampened consumption within the PRC is because of weak confidence in the economy. So people would rather save for a rainy day. So this gets back to what we were saying earlier about how for Beijing, they do want to give confidence in the economy. So people are willing to spend and buy things and help boost the economy. And in doing so, the hope is that it would sort of have a knock-on effect, right, for the rest of the economy. All right, Dr. Chong, before we let you go, I want to touch on tech and innovation because that is the name of the game nowadays. And it has been a big priority for China, especially against the backdrop of a U.S.-China tech rivalry. How do you assess Beijing's efforts so far? And what are the potential risks and rewards in pursuing this path? So, the Beijing has been very quick to emphasize real, leaps that they've made, especially with AI. So this is all the hype around DeepSeek that we saw earlier. Now, at the same time, they're also talking about how, in terms of their ability to manufacture high-end chips, microchips, they've been able to do so. So these all sort of look good, and they put Beijing on a positive trajectory. But I guess the question is scalability and how all this pans out, right? So it's one thing to have hype around single moments, but there needs to be continued momentum. And I think Beijing is claiming that they're quite confident on that front. But we'll see, because the restrictions on the movement of technology, especially chip designs and microchips, they do put a dampener on Beijing's ability to really leverage technology. So this is another area of some uncertainty. All right, lots to look at as the two sessions kicks off today in Beijing. And China's balancing act between economic resilience and geopolitical pressures will be closely watched, not just at home, but all around the world. Thank you so much for your time and your insights today. We really appreciate it. Absolutely. We've been speaking with Dr. Chong Ja Ian, Associate Professor from the Department of Political Science at the NUS Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Stay with us on Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.